Hello everyone and welcome to my first video for my Christmas in July add-on series. And in this video I want to start with some more basic and simple add-ons, but they're still fun to add to your pockets or boxes in folios or mini albums. And these are actually no closure options, so you wouldn't need to add any closures to them. And I want to start with Photomatts and photo booklets. So I definitely prefer to add my photos onto Photomatts when placing them into a pocket. So the first style for today is just this simple photomat which you could decorate and then add a photo on the back of it. And as you can see, I also like to add those white photo papers with a camera stamp on it to the back of the photomat, because that's where you want to place your photos. However, those photomats with a stamp are actually removable. So I'm using a removable glue stick by Scotch for it, so that you could just peel it off like a sticky note, and then you could exchange it for a photo instead of adding your photo right on top. And that's something I first saw on the channel of Scrap and Coffee, and I really love it because when you're making a mini album, especially an interactive mini album, it already gets a little chunky, and then you don't want those photomats with the camera stamps or whatever you are using to also add some more bulk to your albums. So it really helps a lot that these are removable and you can exchange them for a photo. And this way you can also make sure when you add those photomats that the album is also still holding in place when you're adding your photos later. And then for the second style we have this simple photo booklet, and as you can see I decorated it a little bit more than the photomat before, so I actually added some alphabet stickers to the pattern paper from the collection, and then I also decorated the corners by using my corner punching tool, and then I added some enamel dots to the corners as well. So yeah, I actually want to make sure that in this series I also give you some ideas for decorative elements. So this photo booklet can just be opened up and then you have room for two 4x6-inch photos, but you could also add a third photo on the back of the photo booklet as well if you want to. And then for the next two no closure options, I decided to include photo tags and journaling tags. So the first style is this photo tag. So this is a tag for 4x6-inch photos as well, and it is basically a simple photo mat, but then in the form of a tag because I simply love the look of tags. As you can see, for the decoration of this tag, I actually added two smaller pattern paper pieces in the size 3 by 4 inches, and I also added this scallop frame with a little die cut piece from the collection because I thought this would actually complete the look with the two pattern papers. So as I said in my previous video where I showed you my favorite folio number 4 with the big box, I really like this folio style with all the different possibilities of add-ons you could add into the box. So that's what this series Christmas in July is about. And what I like the most about it is actually that you would be able to use a lot of your scraps and decorative elements such as embellishments and stickers. Because for all those 30 add-on ideas I'm sharing with you, you actually wouldn't need any pattern papers larger than 4 by 6 inches. But then, as you can see, even if you have smaller pattern paper scraps, you're still able to use them up on those add-on ideas. So my favorite folio style number 4 will definitely be my go-to folio style every time I have already made a larger interactive mini album and I'm left with some smaller scraps and embellishments from the collection I have used. And what I also like about these add-ons is that they are not only great to add photos onto them, but also for journaling. So as you can see, I also had to include a second tag here in a different size, which would be a great tag for journaling. But of course, you could also use it for smaller photos, but I would definitely use it for journaling instead. And then for the last two no closure options in today's video, I of course also had to include pocket styles. And the first pocket style is this full pocket in which you could add a bunch of like 4x6-inch photos without any Photomatts, so you could just slide them into the pocket. But the pocket is also large enough to also add the basic photo mat or photo booklet I have showed you before, and you could even add the photo tag in here, which I again think looks really great in the pocket as well. And then the last style I included for my first video of my Christmas in July series is this stack pocket. So it's a tag stack pocket, and you could actually also add a photo onto the back of this pocket, but then you could add smaller embellishments or smaller photos in the bottom pocket, and larger photos like 4x6-inch photos could be added to the top pocket. And I think this style is especially great for making a happy mail. So if you decide to include this tag stack pocket in a happy mail, you could use it to add some smaller embellishments like ephemera or stickers or washi tape. Now let's just start with those 6 tutorials for today, and as always you want to start by cutting down your cardstock and pattern paper elements. So you want to cut down your elements according to the measurements on the cutting guides, which are now available in my Etsy store for all those 30 different add-on ideas I'm sharing in this Christmas in July series. And for most of these add-on styles, you are also required to score your cardstock elements. And again, you will find information for scoring on the cutting guides, but then I also included these templates, and they're actually, like most of them, are true to size templates. So they show you exactly what the elements are supposed to look like and where you would need to score them. Now, after preparing all your cardstock and pen and paper elements, you can continue with the next step. And for add-on style number 1, which again is a super simple and basic style, but I still had to include it, you would actually only need to attach your pattern paper A onto your cardstock element A. And for attaching pattern paper, I always like using wet glue instead of tape, because when using wet glue, you're still able to move around your pattern paper before the glue dries, and then you can find the right position so that you have an even border around your pattern paper. And then I also like to get my bone folder to burnish it down and make sure that the pattern paper sticks well to the cardstock. Now for the second add-on style, we would need to actually fold our cardstock on the scoring line. So you want to turn around your cardstock first, and then you just fold up your cardstock and get a bone folder to burnish it down along the scoring line. And then again, you want to add your pattern paper A onto cardstock element A, and I decided that before I add my pattern paper, I actually want to decorate the corners a little, so I used my corner punching tool here, and this is a tool by Craftelier with 3 different options for decorative corners, and I really like using this tool because I think decorating the corners just add a little bit of extra like decorative element to the pattern papers. And then with these punched out corners, I also like to include some enamel dots to the corners as well. Now for the next style, which is add-on style number 3, we would need to prepare the cardstock element A so that it looks like a tag. And as you can see, I'm actually using a template here. But because I was not able to actually print out the correct template for this add-on style, which is of course included in my cutting guide and template bundle for this series, I actually had to use a previous template I've made for a different, I think, page style of my Mega Bundles. So this is a different template. As you can see, it's a little shorter than my cardstock element A here, but it still works fine because I just want to use it to mark the corners and the hole where I want to punch the hole for the tag. And when making tags, I really like using these templates. So as you can see, I just printed it out and cut it out, and then I backed it onto some chipper to make it a little sturdier and to just keep in my stash so that I could use it every time I'm making this add-on style. So just use your template and then get a pencil and mark the hole as well as the corners. And then you can just go ahead and cut off the corners by using your scissors and also punch the hole with the hole punching tool. And I actually like to use my Big Bite by We Are Memory Keepers or We Are Makers. I think they changed their name for this. And what I like to do then is I grab a piece of pattern paper, or actually a scrap from the collection I'm using, or a color which matches the collection I'm using, and then I just add some tape to the back of the pattern paper. And I'm using a very wide tape here, but you would actually be fine with using 1/2 inch tape. And then I just punched some holes next to each other with a little bit of space in between. So when you're using your 1/2 inch tape, you can just punch them on a line in the middle of the tape, but leave some space in between, as you can see here. I actually find it a little bit easier with a different hole punching tool like a crocodile, but I only have my Big Bite with me here in Australia, so that's why I'm using it. And then I'm also using this 1/2 inch circle puncher, and I know that there are actually punching tools to make these circles, especially for tags, but to be honest, I don't really like those because the holes are always larger than the holes I would punch with my Big Bite or Crocodile. So that's why I'm using this method instead. So as you can see, I just turn around my circle punching tool and then I just punch around the holes I have already made so that I have created these circles, which I can then just add onto my tag right around the hole I have punched before. And because you have already added tape to the back of the pattern paper, these circles are self-adhesive, so you just have to remove the tape backing and then you can stick it down. And now we can add pattern paper onto cardstock element A, and you would actually find measurements for pattern paper A which would look like this, and you could just go ahead and glue it onto cardstock element A. But then as I have said before, I decided to actually add smaller pieces, so I cut them in half of the size of pattern paper A, and then I again just used some wet glue here to attach them onto the cardstock. And then for the last step, for my add-on style number 3, I would also add some ribbon to the tag, of course. And as you can see, I like to fold my ribbon in the middle and then I pull it through the hole, and I actually grab the ends and pull them through the loop, and then I carefully pull on each end to tighten the ribbon as well. And then what I didn't include here, but I would usually do, is I also use my lighter to actually melt the ends of the ribbon a little bit so that they won't rip apart. But I also got the tip that you could use some clear nail polish instead to actually seal the ends of the ribbon, and this would give you a cleaner look than using the lighter. And to make my add-on style number 4, which is the journaling tag, you would do exactly the same steps as for the photo tag. So I don't include the steps here again, but instead you can just go ahead and review the previous step to make this tag. So we can continue with making my favorite add-on style number 5, which is the first style of my no closure pocket options. And for this you would need cardstock elements A and B, and first we want to start with further preparing our cardstock element B. So as I said, you have already cut it down to size and scored your cardstock, and now you want to add some tape right next to the scoring lines on each side, so where you scored it. And for this I like to use my 3/8 of an inch tape, and as you can see you want to place it right next to the scoring lines, but you don't want to actually cover up the scoring lines, and also you want to place the tape on the side on which you also scored and you labeled your cardstock. So that's another reason why I really suggest that you always label your cardstock elements. And after placing the tape, you can then cut off the corners, and as you can see, I just cut at an angle right next to the scoring lines, and I cut on each corner. And then I go ahead and turn around my cardstock piece and actually fold up these little flaps we have created with scoring on the back side of my cardstock element B. And before I add cardstock element B onto cardstock element A, I actually want to do the notch first. So that's of course optional. You don't have to do a notch in this pocket, but I really like the look of a notch on a pocket, and also it helps just getting out those Photomatts you would place into the pocket. So just get your notch punch, and then I would also recommend to use a ruler to find the middle of cardstock element B, and then you can just go ahead and mark the middle, so that's where you want to add your notch to. And then when adding the notch, you actually also want to get your pattern paper B, and then you just place it on top of cardstock element B, and you don't attach it yet, but you want to slide it all the way up to the edge of cardstock element B. So as you can see, I make sure that there's an even border on the left and the right side, but then on top of it, the pattern paper is perfectly aligned with the edge of cardstock element B. And that's the position you want to hold it in place in, and then slide it into the notch punch. And as you can see, I just turn around my notch punch so that I can see where I marked the middle, and then I punch down the puncher to actually punch my notch into the pattern paper as well as the cardstock element. And then as you can see, when sliding down the pattern paper, it leaves you with a perfect border around your pattern paper. And then we can continue by adding pattern paper B onto cardstock element B, and again I use wet glue here to be able to still move around the pattern paper and find the perfect position. And to finish up this add-on style, you would just need to attach cardstock element B onto cardstock element A. And for this, I like to remove just half of the tape backing from the bottom flap of the pocket. And then I hold up the sticky side and I use the non-sticky side, so where the tape backing is still attached, to actually align my cardstock element B with the edge of cardstock element A. And then once I have found the right position, I can go ahead and remove the rest of the tape backing to actually stick it down. And once the bottom of the pocket is attached, you can then go ahead and open it up and actually remove the tape backing from the sides of the pocket, and then you can just go ahead and stick it down by carefully folding it on top of cardstock element A. So that's it for this pocket style, and as you can see, I also added a decorative element. So I just added this title frame. So I used a scalloped frame die cut, and then I also cut out some solid pattern papers to add on top of it, and that's a place where you could just do a title or just write a little quote or whatever you would like, or you could of course also add some embellishments like stickers to it. And then we can already make our last add-on style for today, and this is the stacked pocket. And the first step would be to again prepare the base of the stacked pocket to make it look like a tag. And again, I'm using this template here. As I said before, this template is actually not the correct template for this style, which would be of course included in the bundle with all the cutting guides and the templates. But because I didn't manage to print it out before filming this video, I'm using a different template, which still works fine because it's the same size for the corners and the hole. But for this text style, you would also need to cut the corners of the pattern paper. And for this, I would also use the template in the cutting guides. But because I don't have them, I'm now doing it with this template by just aligning the pattern paper with the correct border. And then I use the template to actually mark the corners, and then I grab my ruler to mark a line just 1/8 of an inch from the corners. And then the second line is where you want to cut off the corners for your pattern paper. And then of course you can also already cut off the corners on cardstock element A as well. And then you can attach pattern paper A onto cardstock element A. So again, I use my red glue and I attach it to the top of cardstock element A. And then I use my template again to also mark where I would need to punch the hole. And then of course I use my hole punching tool, which is my big bite here, to actually punch the hole. And then again, I use this scrap piece, which I already backed with some tape, and then I have already punched a hole with my hole punching tool. So now I only have to get my circle punch to also punch the circle around the hole, and then I can remove the tape backing to place this around the hole on top of the tag. And then we need to further prepare the pockets we want to place on the tag. So for this we need cardstock elements B and C, and then on cardstock element B we actually go ahead and place 3/8 of an inch tape right next to the scoring lines on each side. So on each side we have scored it. And then for cardstock element C, you only want to add your 3/8 of an inch tape next to the scoring lines on the sides of the cardstock element, so not on the bottom. And then we need to cut off the corners on the cardstock elements. So you want to cut at an angle right next to the scoring lines on the bottom of the pockets as well as on the top of the cardstock elements. After cutting the corners, we can turn around our cardstock elements because now we want to fold up those flaps we have created with scoring. So for cardstock element C, you can go ahead and fold up all those 3 flaps and also use a bone folder to burnish it down. And then for cardstock element C, you only want to fold up the flaps on the left and the right side. And then we can also add notches to the pockets. Again, this is an optional step, so if you don't want to add notches to the pockets, you can just skip this step and continue with the next step. But if you want to add notches, again, you would need your notch punching tool, and then you want to slide your pattern paper to the top of your cardstock element. So make sure that there's an even border on the left and the right side, but then the pattern paper is aligned with the cardstock element underneath, and that's how you want to slide it into the notch punch. And as you can see here, I first just eyeball it, but then I also get my ruler to actually make sure that this is the middle of the cardstock and the pattern paper where I'm going to place my notch. But to be honest, sometimes I'm totally fine with just eyeballing it. So yeah, it depends on how you like it. And you could also, of course, mark the middle of the cardstock element first, as I did for the previous pocket style. Now, after punching the notches to our pattern papers and cardstock, I actually don't want to attach the pattern paper onto the cardstock yet, but instead I want to attach cardstock elements B and C first to our cardstock element A. And I start by attaching cardstock element B, which is going to be the bottom pocket. And for attaching, I like to remove just half of the tape backing of from the bottom of the pocket, and then I use the non-sticky side to align the pocket, the cardstock element, with the cardstock element A. And then once I've found the right position, I go ahead and just remove the rest of the tape backing to stick it down, and I also like using my bone folder here to burnish it down as well. And after the bottom of the pocket is attached, you can just open it up and remove the tape backing from the sides of the pocket, and also fold it up to stick it down onto cardstock element A. And then I just slide cardstock element C into the bottom pocket, and once I have it in the right position, so you can actually slide it all the way up to the scoring line, so that's why I think the scoring line is helpful. And then you can just continue by removing the tape backing from the sides. So as you can see, I just hold it down in place and then I remove the tape backing. It would probably also work if you remove the tape backing first and carefully slide it in. But yeah, that's what I didn't do, and you see me struggling here a little bit with actually removing the tape backing. But if you struggle with it, you could also use your tweezers to remove and grab the tape backing. And now that both cardstock elements are attached to the bottom cardstock element A, we can continue by adding our pattern papers B and C onto the cardstock elements B and C. And I start by adding pattern paper B onto cardstock element B, so I just use some glue around the edges here and stick it down. But then for cardstock element C, you actually want to be careful, so you don't want to place the glue onto the pattern paper all the way around. So actually you just want to place it on the top half of the pattern paper. So I actually added too much glue on the bottom here as well. So yeah, it is totally fine if you just add it to the top and then on the half of each side, because it's actually supposed to slide into the pocket, but you want this to still be open. So you don't want the pattern paper to stick onto cardstock element A, because you want the pocket to be open and go all the way to the bottom. But you still want the pattern paper to be longer because you have the notch. So you could also, like, if you don't include the notch, you could use smaller pattern papers, but I made the pattern paper size so that it would look nice with the notch, so that the here red pattern paper is behind the notch, if that makes sense. And then for the last step for this add-on style, you just want to add some ribbon to the hole. So again, I like to fold my ribbon in the middle, and then I pull it through the hole, and I also pull through the ends of the ribbon through the loop. And then I just carefully pull on each end of the ribbon to actually tighten it. And that's it for the first video of my Christmas in July series, with the first 6 add-on styles you could include in any box or pocket in your folios or mini albums. So thank you so much for watching, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!